Welcome to Curious Joel, a show about curiosity taking us deeper into the. And this is why I do it live, guys. Uh, Forgot my own intro. See, to be fair, last time I did an interview, I was having somebody on. They actually did the intro for me because they'd listened to too many of the intros, and I'm like, I guess one was enough to get me rusty. Welcome to Curious Joel, a show about curiosity taking us deeper into the topics of people's passion and interesting conversation. My guest today is Allan Dutch. Allan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Joel. It's good to see you
You too.
again.
What is the passion we're talking about today?
We are talking around creativity,
Okay.
mainly my love of music and art and teaching.
Okay. So let's get right to the root of this. Like, when did that start? When did you know that like music was one of your passions in life?
Oh gosh, that started really early, and I'm
Okay.
giving my age away. It's probably been 60 years,
Okay.
easily. Easily. It was the first time I picked up a guitar and um, actually figured out how to play, and
Mm-hmm.
had a couple of friends who were interested, and we'd get together and you put together a funky little band that doesn't go anywhere, but nevertheless you get off the ground. I had a friend in high school who was a phenomenal player. Even at
Okay.
that time, he was modeled after Chet Atkins. Loved playing Chet Atkins finger
Okay.
picking style,
Gotcha.
and so because he was so skilled, I got a good chance to learn a great deal from him. So that's kind of
Gotcha.
where my music took off from.
So, like, about what age was that, if you don't mind me asking?
Uh, no, no, no. That was probably 16, 17.
Gotcha. Like mid teen years.
Yeah, yeah, mid-teen
Gotcha.
years. I tried picking up the guitar before then, but I didn't know enough to stick with it or anything. But by then I
Gotcha.
was ready.
Okay. And then let's just go on a little journey of like, where does that kind of like the flow of that go from, like, because I happen to know that your current uh status with musical instruments and stuff like that is vastly beyond just a guitar. So like,
It is.
what was your journey? Kind of like walk us through that path.
Sure, sure. Well, from from high school, I did actually get into a couple of bands that furthered my interest for sure. Um, by the time I was a young adult, I was really into our church,
Okay.
and I started singing a lot of music in the church, and really developed a love for that. And
Okay.
while I was in one of the churches, probably in my late 20s, well, I actually went to college about that time to study music. And so I
Hmm.
studied music for a couple of years and had to bow out for financial reasons and such. But I kept up
Sure.
my love and my journey of music. Um, and I saw someone conducting a choir once,
Okay.
and really loved the idea of that. In fact, I remember going way back when I was like 7 or 8. Uh, we used to play records. Those are big in my day. Okay.
Hey,
Uh,
they're making a resurgence too.
they are they are making a
I know
resurgence.
people that are younger than me that have record collections now because it's
Yeah,
cool again.
absolutely, absolutely. It's back again. Anyway, I remember playing records and mostly classical music that my mother had, but
Hmm.
standing there and flailing my arms around like I was conducting. And it had always been something I really wanted to do.
Hmm.
So I talked with this man that was conducting the choir after the service and said, I'm real interested in music. I'm studying music and I want to do what you do. And so he gave me a couple of pointers, and I found myself in a church at one point, actually playing guitar still. And then I had one of the pastors come up to me and says, "Hey, we're doing a musical." in a, for Easter or something. I can't remember,
Sure.
Christmas,
Like
Easter,
a
one of those.
pageant
Like a
musical.
pageant kind of thing, yeah, but a
Gotcha.
full musical. We've got a band and we're going to have singers and everything, but I need somebody to conduct it. And I said, I would love to do that, but I don't know what I'm doing. And he said, well, don't tell anybody that. Just do it. And so I dove in feet first and
Okay.
conducted this musical, and that really took off. And so I stayed with the church music for a good long time, and then decided to go back to school and get my master's degree. And so I got my master's in composition and conducting. And from there, I actually started to, uh, get jobs uh, conducting in churches, doing
Okay.
choirs and small orchestras, those kinds of things. And then that really kind of pushed me into a career that lasted a number of decades. And I wound up in actual church music full time as a conductor and leader of orchestras and choirs, and handbells was a big thing back then. And
Yeah.
and you know anybody who liked music but didn't know anything about it, they got into the handbell choir. That's usually the way
Sure.
it was. But it was usually fun because they really wanted to be there and they wanted to learn, and so you
Right.
could often move them along a little bit. So I did that, and I wound up living in Atlanta, Georgia, for a number of years, and then eventually in Wisconsin for a number of years. And all that time, I was in full-time music ministry. Um, while I was doing that, I became interested in digital music, and it was just really on the cutting edge at the time.
Really quick, for people that
Yeah.
might not know what you're talking about, what do you mean by digital music?
Digital music. Digital music is music that you can create on the computer, and you don't necessarily need any other instruments, although you can do audio, which is like what we're doing right now, where you're actually
Right.
speaking into a microphone and such. You can record that way. But I was interested in writing instrumental music. And so all I needed was an electronic keyboard that would connect up with my computer, and I could actually start to develop music on the computer that way. So that was digital music, but it was really, really on the very beginning, kind of cutting edge of digital music.
Gotcha.
I'd heard a couple of people put out some albums of very easy, simple um, digital music, but it caught my ear, and I really enjoyed it a lot. So I
Yeah.
decided it was something I wanted to do, and I started with that, and I've continued ever since. I'm still doing it. So
Yeah. When you started, I know that there's the technical term for that electronic keyboard hooked up to a computer is a MIDI.
yeah,
Um, Now, what I cannot recall right at the moment, I'm sure there's once I've heard the full thing. What does MIDI actually stand for? Do you know that off the top of your head?
it's a musical interface, something. I don't know. I can't
It's
remember
like
the D and the I stand for.
yeah, it's like digital something.
Yeah,
Musical interface,
musical
digital input or something.
input.
Nope,
Yeah.
something
No,
like that.
interface. Musical
Musical.
instrument digital interface.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I was like, there's something to do the back of it. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure people now, if you when you say something like that, they're like, oh yeah, I've seen people do that all over the place.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you kind of
It's
like
real fun.
got in on a very early.
I got into it very early. Really didn't know much about what I was doing. I was just kind of. It was somewhat like a sideline hobby for me at the time,
Sure.
because I was actually writing all of my music by hand up to that point. Was writing a lot of music for the choirs and the
Mhm.
instrumentals, instrumentalists I was working with. So that that pretty much occupied most of my time. But on the side, I was playing with this digital stuff, trying to get
Yeah.
something to come together. Yeah.
So you went from playing instruments and singing to conducting and
Yeah.
then to composing
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
digitally composing. So
Absolutely.
I kind of want to take a look at like the bridges between those because
Okay.
I
Sure.
can 100% tell you that there's some people out there that they are like, I can play an instrument, I could never conduct, or I've conducted a little bit. You want me to compose? What does that because like and to me, I as someone that doesn't actually play any instruments, I've tried to learn a few. I haven't had the ability at the moment to like fully dedicate to like learning any of them. But like I like music, I like instruments, and I like the idea of being able to play them. But like to me, those are enormous gaps. Those are enormous gaps going from playing to conducting to composing. So like what does that like those steps, those bridges look like to you?
Yeah. They, you know, taken taken individually, they seem like they are light years apart. And
Yeah.
in some ways they are. I can tell you, for me, there was just it was a heart's desire, first of all, that was
Sure.
there. I I, I had wanted to. I wanted to sing. I wanted to be an entertainer. I used to sing in clubs when I was, first getting into music and such. So, there's all of these kind of um, small bridges between things. Yes, I started to play guitar and I got better, and I found some friends that knew how to play guitar. And then I had this friend that was really good. And so I learned a lot from him. And I got into some groups. And then I got old enough that I decided I wanted to try and sing in some restaurants and clubs and that kind of thing. And so those kinds of things are just, stepping stones, I suppose, rather than bridges.
Mm.
Um, but in that, within that, my desire to actually write songs came about because I grew up in the 60s.
Mm.
And so the 60s, everybody was writing songs. Everybody,
Right.
every time you turn around, somebody was writing a song. And, and the market was such that it seemed like there was a new singer or a new group every single day, you know. Um,
Bit oversaturated market kind of.
absolutely. You've
Yeah.
heard the term one-hit wonders.
Yeah, and
Well,
the 60s are chock full of one hit wonders that
chock
you're
full
like,
of them.
do you know the band?
Absolutely.
No, I don't know the band. I know the
Yeah.
song, don't know the band. Did they
Yeah.
even make anything else? I don't
Yeah.
know. It's like, yeah, they had 5 albums. Like, do I know any of the songs? No. You know the
Well,
one.
well, you know the group the Monkees. You've heard the
Yeah.
Monkees?
Yeah.
Okay, the Monkees were one of these groups that they put together for a TV
Right.
program. It
Right.
used to be like the Partridge Family was a
Mhm.
was a big one, and then they decided they were going to put together this group called the Monkees, and
Mhm.
four guys that are supposed to emulate the Beatles. Okay,
Right.
well, one of the guys in the group was a guy named Michael Nesmith, who
Okay.
was their lead guitarist. Well,
Mhm.
Michael Nesmith got the idea to start videoing various groups playing instruments and interposing their videos with, design work, outdoor scenes, all of, and he literally was one of the instrumental guys, pardon the pun, one of the,
I was gonna let you go beyond that before I
yeah,
mention it, but go
I,
for it. You
I,
can always mention a pun on my podcast.
yeah, I saw the puns on your Facebook page. So, uh, but he was really very, very instrumental in getting uh, video music
Like
off the
music
ground,
videos. Okay.
music video off the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
I didn't.
and
I did not know that.
yeah, he literally overnight made himself a fortune.
I mean,
Just
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I mean, there's you have MTV that's based entirely
yeah,
off of that. Now they have all sorts of other stuff on it, but like that's where they got their start. You have all
yeah.
sorts of like YouTube dedicated
Oh
things,
yeah,
like what was it Vivo. Oh gosh,
Uh-huh.
hold on. I think
Evo.
it's yeah, but like they're
Yeah.
just a music video channel. That's what they do is just music videos, and so like that guy spawned so many different creative things. And like I've had someone on my podcast that makes digital art for music videos as a hobby, Milana Dodd, which you actually happen to know.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
she does digital media for music videos because she loves to do that. And it's like
Yeah.
all of these
Yeah.
people like branching out from this one person is like, hey, what if I just did this?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Absolutely. And that kind of is a great segue. Being that this is a podcast, let's segue
Mm.
into something that took me from just doing music into deciding that I wanted to conduct. Because
Okay.
when I got into the church music, I was leading music with guitar and some piano, but I was mostly a guitarist at that point.
Mm.
And then my heart kind of went back to when I was 7 or 8. And I'm standing there conducting classical records, and I saw this guy doing it in a church, and I said, I want to do that. That's something I want to do. And I
Yeah.
had to find out what did I need to know in order to be able to do that. So
Sure.
I think for those that are listening who are interested in, how would you get from one place to another, it really starts with what do I need to know to get there?
Right.
Now,
Okay.
I happen to go to college to do it
Mm.
because when I was about that age, 20 or so, the only way to really learn something was to go to college.
Yeah, you couldn't
You
just
know,
YouTube it.
yeah, you couldn't just do it. You couldn't just do it. And at one point, I almost had a chance to go to Los Angeles. I was living in Northern California. Almost had a
Okay.
chance to go to Los Angeles and rub shoulders with people that probably could have pushed me into the music business a lot quicker.
Mhm.
But it didn't pan out. And so I wound up going to college. Nowadays, it's not necessarily that important to go to college to learn this stuff because,
True.
frankly, over the years since I've been to college, I've unlearned a lot of stuff that I was taught in college. It's a good framework, it's a good platform to develop your skills, but you also have to be willing to let go of some of the stuff that just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because it's as we've already talked about, like it's an ever changing industry. You can't just like,
Absolutely.
well, I learned this once, so that's good forever. It's like, no,
Yeah.
no, like that
Yeah.
was true then, and
Yeah.
what's changed from there. But
Right. Well,
if
it's like what's going on in the digital music industry now is that, I was taught to write the music first, at least writing it in my head, if nothing else, and then play it. Nowadays with loops and samples and
yeah,
a lot of the industry companies that are into digital music are now producing works that you can just kind of piece stuff together, and if you know what you're doing, you come out with something that's absolutely stunning,
yeah,
you know. And you see it all the time when you go to the movies. Guys like Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer is an incredible musician on his own right, but
yeah,
he's almost predominantly digital nowadays and uses samples, uses sound effects, uses all of this stuff and pieces it
yeah,
together.
yeah.
And it's great stuff.
Random fun fact that I love telling people, just randomly dropping this comment is you listen to Hans Zimmer a lot more than you think you do. Because if you
Yeah.
listen to an electric car, the
Uh-huh.
the the sound that electric cars make so that it's
Yeah.
audible is Hans Zimmer.
Yeah. I love it.
And I
Love
was
it.
I was telling somebody like they're trying to remember who Hans Zimmer is because not everyone pays attention to conductors. I'm like,
Right, right.
it's and I started naming movies. I'm like, wait, all of them? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going through like
Oh,
all
oh,
these like Spirit and like I'm like
yeah.
wait, that too. I'm like, Yeah, if you ever want to
Oh,
see an impressive like spectrum of work going from cartoons to live action sagas, Hans Zimmer's got it all in his pocket. And then
oh, he
he's like,
does.
"What if I made electric cars iconic sound too?" And
Yeah,
it's like, I'm sorry, he composed electric car sounds. It's like, yeah, so they have an engine sound. It's like,
yeah,
oh. Just a
yeah.
fun
I
fact,
mean,
like, I love listening to Hans Zimmer. It's like, that was a Tesla. I'm like, yes.
yeah, yes, yes, yeah. We call him Hans. Yeah, yeah. Phenomenal, phenomenal musician, and just beyond his time. I mean, he is
Oh,
just,
absolutely.
he's just incredible. And I'll put a plug in. There's a brand new biopic about Hans Zimmer that's on Netflix, I think now, or maybe Prime.
Okay.
Uh, you know, sorry if I'm plugging Amazon, but
It's okay.
anyway, I just saw it being advertised. It looks phenomenal.
Okay.
Just
Uh,
how he does it, and
yeah.
what it is basically, it's a live um, production that they're videoing, and he has all of these great
Oh my
artists
gosh.
involved in this thing, and he's got a massive orchestra and electric guitars and keyboards and everything, and he's on stage playing bass and different keyboards, and they're
Oh my
doing
gosh.
all this music from all of his great movies,
Yeah.
live, and it's just
That's
looks fun,
yeah,
my
that
kind
sounds
of thing.
phenomenal.
Yeah, it really is. It
Yeah.
really is. But
Yeah, but like
but
you said, like there's people that are writing like they produce as they go this music. I've watched
yeah,
um Charlie Puth
yeah,
recreate like because he's one of the few people I actually watched them do behind the scenes because he's really down to earth when he like he talks about like how he makes his music. And yes, he's got perfect pitch or whatever, but like he just sits there and goes like, so I just sat down and I was like, ding, 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 ding. And then I was like, ooh, what if I put some drums in here? And then I'm like, that's crazy. He just sits down
yeah,
on his computer like, I'm making a song today. He just
yeah.
like
There,
plays it out and goes, this is naturally what comes after this, and then
yeah,
this, and then that, and then he goes back and makes some small edits, and then he's like, yeah, and that was the hit song yesterday. I'm like, okay, cool.
I know. And that kind of a mind is rare. It really
Oh,
is.
100%.
Yeah, in the industry, that's really rare. I have I have a few pieces that I was able to just sit down and write in a
Hmm.
matter of maybe 6 or 8 hours total.
Yeah.
That just flowed out of me. I didn't even
Yeah.
have to think about them, but much of the time I'm really giving it some thought as I'm doing it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I know how things fit together because I studied how they fit together so much when I was in college. So
Yeah.
I know how to piece stuff together, but it's a different mindset than Charlie Puth has.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, like I said, he's very unique when it comes to a lot of stuff. That's why his songs are so iconic, and a lot of them become these songs that everyone's heard is because
Yeah,
he has such not just an ear for the actual physical sounds, but also he knows what people like. So he has an ear for the people as well. So he has like
yeah.
one side that's going
Oh
perfect
yeah,
pitch, and the other side is going people will like this. This is gonna resonate with people, and
yeah,
he can kind of like filter both of that. And what comes out the front is just like this
yeah.
amazing, amazing jam.
And that,
Uh,
and that is phenomenal. I I appreciate that ability because I knew a number of people in when I was going to college who had perfect pitch
mhm.
who wouldn't be able to do that. They
Yeah,
wouldn't
I
have the
mean,
other side where they understand what people want to hear.
yeah, I mean, I hear people talk about perfect pitch a lot, and like it's really interesting because it's like it's just like if you showed me a red square and be like that's a red square. It's like, yep, wow. It's like, can you
Yeah,
make one? No, I
no,
can see it's a red square. And
yeah,
it's like I can recognize every single color. Can I? Am I a great artist? No. Can I
Yeah,
sketch out some things? Sure. I would
yeah.
never call myself an artist. I can
Well,
recognize colors perfectly. I've got in the full range of colors. Like not everyone does have that, but I have the full range of spectrum I can see and distinguish and pull the name of. Not
yeah.
quite to like the what's the hex number or whatever that is, but
Oh, yeah. The
pretty
hexes.
close. I can get pretty close. Can I use that effectively in art? No. And so it's like, yes, you can recognize that's a C flat or whatever. I'm like, cool.
Yeah,
Anyway, what can you do with it? Not
yeah.
really
Well,
anything.
and that is the problem for people that have, some of these really unique skills. I don't know if you can call it a talent necessarily, but in my experience, a lot of people that have perfect pitch, they don't know what to do with it. And so they wind up using it as a means of telling you that you don't know what you're singing. You know,
Sure.
they'll say, okay, here's the pitch, sing that pitch. No, no, you're flat. You're flat.
Right.
That's about all they can do with it. And they can't stand to be in front of an orchestra or a choir
Oh yeah,
because the human element is just too much for their ears to take.
sure. I mean, there's
Yeah.
there's certain people that like they do have outfits. I'm just like, stop, 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 stop,
Yeah.
stop. No, no, those are not like
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
I can't do anything. It's not like I'm going out and designing new clothes. It's just
That's
like,
right.
was
That's
it your
right.
best choice today?
Yeah.
But yeah, but I
That's
mean,
not technically crimson.
right,
No.
right. And and I can speak with the color aspect of like I got married in a red suit. I have a specific red that I like, and other reds kind of don't hit it. And it took a
Yeah.
long time to get a red that I liked enough. And it was because like if you look at it in person, it's not as good as it looks in pictures, which is what I would prefer for my wedding.
Yeah.
I'm not wearing
Yeah.
that suit every day, but I'd like it to look good, better in pictures than it does on me in person.
Sure.
And so it's something that it
Yeah.
took ages to find that because everyone's like, yeah, we have a red. It's like, no, no, don't. No, that's like a deep burgundy. It's like, don't call that red. I want red. But yeah. So it can having those things of just, and I think it's. mm, I think that's those types of skills have more to do with being able to correlate well because
Uh-huh.
people do that all the time with the alphabet. I can
Sure.
recognize that as an A. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you've got an alphabet perfect mind. It's like, yep, doesn't mean I'm a great novelist. And so like
That's
it's
true.
it's something that
That's
I
true.
think that like as I grew up, I associated those words with those colors. So I know the difference between a lilac and fuchsia and all these other colors like that people are like I don't are those even like vaguely close together? I don't know
Yeah.
what is fuchsia. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, okay. But like I've made those associations so strong that I can see a color and go, I know what color that is. And I think
Yeah.
that people with perfect pitch have just so strongly associated those notes with the sound they hear, so they can tell you that the difference between this pitch and this pitch is totally different. Like I can tell the difference between purples that are this close together, and it's like it's just association. I think that if I had that same exposure to notes, like perfect notes and reading music, I probably would have a similar skill set. I can't prove that by any
Yeah.
means, but that's my own personal theory on that of like it's
Yeah.
just association. And if you have that
Well,
association,
and I think that's very close because there is such a thing as relative pitch.
I
And
didn't know that.
that's something that I developed as a singer,
Mm-hmm.
and particularly when I was in college and I was singing in choirs, is you you develop this sense that when you're doing a piece of music, you know precisely where certain pitches are in your head.
Hmm.
You just know it. Okay.
Interesting.
Now, if I get away from that piece of music, I can't tell you what an F sounds like. I can
Sure.
kind of go, it's probably in that range right there.
Right.
But when I'm singing that piece of music, even if it's 30 pages long, I can tell you exactly where the F is
It's
because he
contextual.
developed this connection, this
Interesting.
correlation
That
between the music that you're singing and the pitches.
Yeah, that sounds like the difference between people that like can always tell you which way north is versus
Yeah,
I can run backwards through this entire thing in the dark. It's like
yeah,
north doesn't help you when your eyes are closed and you're trying to
that's
dodge
right.
objects. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, because that's my style of directions. Like, I worked at a camp for years and years. I could run that whole place backwards and not trip probably once at all. I know where all
yeah,
the rocks are. I know where all the trees are. I know where their limbs are. I know where the sidewalk stops and where the ditches are. But you ask me which way I'm going on the freeway that I lived at the same place for ages. I'd be like, does it go north? I don't know.
yeah.
And then other people are like, well, that's north. I'm like, okay, cool. I don't
Okay, yeah,
know.
yeah,
And so it sounds like
yeah,
that's the relative pitch is contextual
yeah.
versus just
Exactly.
out of context. You can just, yep, there it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely, that's the difference. Yeah,
I've never heard of that before. So that's really cool.
yeah. So, and I think the same thing works for, you were talking about colors. I think the same thing works for
Sure.
colors. If you are, like, I do a lot of artwork. Now, I can't tell
Hmm.
you necessarily the difference between crimson and fuchsia, but I could put them in line because
Sure.
I have this understanding of what the spectrum feels like,
Sure.
from doing art for so long. So,
Gotcha.
it's contextual. It's not,
Yeah. Yeah,
you know,
I mean, it
it's
makes
not
sense that it
an,
exists, but I'd never heard of someone saying using that term before. So
yeah,
I
relative
appreciate it.
relative
Yeah.
pitch. Yeah.
Oh, gosh, hold on. We got so far off of who we were.
We did. We
At
did.
some point, we were
We're
trying to
coming
talk
back.
about the bridges of going
Okay.
from music. I don't know where we branched off from that. Oh
Okay.
dear.
Well, we're talking about, the bridge that took me from just playing music
Right.
to conducting.
Right.
And uh, the only thing I can tell you is that I think that deep inside of me was still that desire to conduct, to
Hmm.
be able to stand up in front of people and make music by letting them make music.
Okay.
Uh, that's really always been an interest of mine. I've always sung, and I've always kind of been out front, particularly
Hmm.
when I was in church music or whatever. But I really enjoy just being able to stand there and give them cues and allow them to make the music. And that became a real strong bridge for me when I decided to become a conductor rather than a singer. Um, and I kept my hand in it a little bit, sang here and there and played some instruments and such, but mostly my desire was to conduct. And the bridge from that to doing digital music came about because of my composing. I, while I was conducting, I decided that there were things that I was hearing in my head. I really wanted to see how well they worked on paper. And so I would start
So
writing these things.
So did it start with like small like edits to like music that you were already conducting, or did it go, let me do my own one and like just kind of like was it a leap or was it like small like building to like a composing? Because like I I feel like I could make that like slow, like, well, I can fix this really quick,
Yeah.
and then go to look. That's what I did with my podcast. I started another podcast doing small edits, uh, you know, here and
Yeah.
there, and then I went
Sure.
like, I can do my own. I have all the information now, and like it went from like I built. It was a slow build of information to go. I've got all the skills now.
Yeah.
Why? Okay, here we go.
Yeah. Yeah. It was more or less it was a slow build up. You
Hmm.
know, I was never I had never gotten to the point early on where I just said, you know what, I'm just going to compose. Um,
Okay.
you know, I didn't know enough about the actual writing of music until I went to college.
Mm.
You know, and when you first get into a music program, for those that don't know how a music program works, depends on the school you go to. Now, if you go to, say, the Berkeley School of Music, which is not Berkeley, California, it's Berklee, Berkeley School of Music. Yeah, I think it's in Ohio. Forgive me, Berkeley, if I got that wrong, but they're a type of in lack of a better term, they're kind of like a music trade school.
Okay.
When you go there, that's all you do is you study music.
There's
Well,
no like minors
I went
of
to a
like,
regular 4-year college, so I'm studying science and I'm studying
right.
history and math and all of that kind of stuff. And so I got to study music, but I was not fully immersed in it. And really didn't learn a whole lot until I went back for my master's, because then I was just doing nothing but music. And because of that, I spent 4 years getting a master's and actually got the equivalent of 2 masters, although my degree only shows one. But I got the conducting and the composition rolled into one.
But they didn't
And
give you two different master's
they didn't give
degrees?
no, they didn't give me two. They gave me um, my major was music composition with an emphasis on conducting.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
that's how they did it. It was a state university, so that's typically how they would do something like that. If I
Gotcha.
wanted if I wanted the full gamut of two degrees, I'd have to pick up a bunch of miscellaneous courses that I didn't even want. So
Gotcha.
rather than spend my money on that, I'd rather just immerse myself completely in the music.
Sure.
But when I went back to get my master's, by then I was already trying to write pieces, and mostly for these small groups that I had for church and such, 2, 3 voices maybe, um, and doing, simple harmonies. And when I went back and got my master's, that's when I really started to learn how to put, music to paper. And that was the bridge for me there. But it was a real desire that I'd always had, just to, somehow create music. And somewhere along the line, I started out, like I said, playing guitar and singing, and I sang in, coffee shops and various things like that. But that wasn't enough making music. I wanted to make it. I wanted to create it.
Yeah.
And so it was that desire, coupled with my going back to college to get my master's, that really opened that door for me. So,
Okay. So like that input of information and knowledge did actually boost, like, that helped propel your that bridge over to actually creating the music itself instead of just
it
playing it.
really did. It really
Okay.
did. Now,
That's cool.
that was at a time when, social media wasn't even a word, wasn't even a
Hmm.
phrase yet. And so nowadays, if, someone that's, fairly young wants to start making music, there is so much information now
Oh
out
yeah.
on the information highway. I mean, you can watch, 3 or 4 videos and you can already be writing some music,
Yeah.
you know. And much of it nowadays, in fact, a lot of them will advertise you don't even need to know how to write music. And that's
Mm,
very true. You do have to have an innate sense of how it's supposed to go together, though.
right.
You know,
It's more gut instinct than knowledge.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
And the knowledge will definitely help you. I mean, I don't know Zimmer's complete background, but I can tell you from the stuff that he writes that that man knows how to write music.
Yeah.
So that doesn't come from just piecing things together.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. Um. Okay. So you got from conducting to composing.
Yeah.
I know that you also somewhere in this line added instruments on, because you talked about the guitar and a little bit about the piano.
Right.
But I know that you have more instruments under your belt than that. Where,
Well,
like, where in that timeline did you add them, and what are the other instruments that you play?
okay. So the first instrument I played was a trumpet, and
Okay.
that was in sixth grade.
Okay.
Yeah. So and the only reason I picked it up was I tried to get into the choir, and the choir teacher said, "No, you don't have a voice for choir." Yeah. So I might not have at that time, but who knows? Anyway, it's the kind of thing where uh, you talk to somebody or you see somebody that's just this amazing actor, and you said, "Oh yeah, my very first acting teacher told me I'd never make it in movies or whatever," and then they are.
Then
And so,
you have a face for radio.
yeah, exactly.
You have a voice for a trumpet. What?
That's Yeah, I do. So anyway, I picked up the trumpet, and I stuck with that for a little while. But long story short, it drove my dad crazy trying to play practice at home. So that went by the wayside really quick. So then I decided I wanted to play guitar. So they bought
Okay.
me a guitar for Christmas one year, and I kind of strum around on it, but I had no idea what I was supposed to do with it. In fact,
Right.
this is how ignorant I was. I will
Uh-oh.
reveal this one truth to you. I had this guitar, and I see all of the frets on the guitar and the strings laying across. I had no idea you're supposed to press down on the strings.
So you're just like resting your fingers on the
Yeah,
strings and just
I was
listen to this
resting my fingers, and
muted.
you get the flip, 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 and I can't play this thing. It
This
never
instrument's
dawned on
broken.
me. Yeah, never dawned on me. So, but from that, I went when I was in high school. I decided I wanted to be part of the band,
Hmm.
and because I could get extra credits for it, and it sounded like something cool. Well,
Hmm.
they already, one thing about a high school band is they always have more than enough trumpets. So,
Sure.
so the teacher took me aside and said, "How would you like to play French horn?"
Okay.
And I said, "What's a French horn?" He showed me one. I said, "Oh yeah, I want to play that thing. I mean, what a gorgeous instrument it is." And so he took me aside, and I would meet with him every day, and he would teach me a little bit about music and how to play the French horn. And so I picked up French horn. I was actually going to be a French horn major when I first started in college.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. And so uh, another fun story is um, I had to go see the French horn teacher and tell him that I was interested in playing French horn. And because everybody in the music program, if you were a music major, you had to either sing in the choir or you had to play an instrument. You had to do one of the two. Well,
Mhm.
I couldn't sing in the choir because I was told that I didn't have a voice, right?
You had a voice for trumpets.
Right. And so I played trumpet a little bit, and I played French horn all the way through high school. And so I went to the French horn teacher, told him I wanted to play French horn. And he says, "Well, let's see if you can play this. Okay. I want you to play a 2-octave scale up and down." So I started to play. He goes, "No, no, wait a minute. I don't want you to hold the instrument." And he took the instrument from me and laid it up on top of a file cabinet with the mouthpiece sticking out. And he said, "Without touching the instrument, I want you to play 2 octaves up and down." Well, that it's one of those, you
Uh-huh.
know, and I'm moving the French horn all over the place and I couldn't do it. And I said, "That can't be done." And he took his French horn and placed it up on now, mind you, this guy was the first chair French horn player for San Francisco Symphony. So,
Okay. So he
yeah,
knows what he's doing.
so he knows he laid his French horn on top of the file cabinet, put his hands behind him, and played an entire piece.
Oh my gosh.
the whole thing. It just blew me away so much that I thought, I can't do this.
Another
This is
good
not
pun.
the instrument for me. So I played guitar. So I went to the guitar teacher and told him I wanted to play guitar. Well, guitar in the school was classical guitar.
Oh,
Right?
that's a
So
whole nother.
a whole nother genre.
Yeah.
Well, I played finger picking style, so I figured that was good enough. Okay. No,
No.
completely different style of fingering.
Oh yeah.
And so I started to play, and he takes a look at my fingers and goes, "You're going to have to grow those fingernails." And he showed me his fingernails, and they're half inch beyond his fingers.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, well, I don't grow fingernails really well. Plus, I was biting my fingernails at the time, so that didn't
You
help
cannot
anything.
do that with classical
You can't do that.
music.
So I was using nail polish, clear nail polish and everything I could. That really nasty stuff to make you stop biting your nails. Tried and I couldn't grow my fingernails. So then I tried plastic fingers. That didn't work. I tried artificial fingernails. That didn't work. And so I went from there to singing in the choir. And that's where I found my voice.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's when I really, really started to blossom and sang in the opera chorus and all sorts of things. So
nice. So we have trumpet, French horn, guitar, semi-classical guitar, vocals. What else?
So then that's where you start to learn piano.
Gotcha.
You have to be able to play a certain amount of piano in order to graduate. So I started to play piano. I started to take private lessons. I got so far with those, but I really just wanted to play. I knew chords on the piano, and I started to learn how to move around on the chords. And I didn't realize that a chord, which is usually made up of 3 notes, can be inverted. So, like a C major chord is C, E, G, but it can also be E, G, C, with the C being the high note, or it can be G, C, E, with the E being the high note. And so you've got a couple of inversions. Now, the more notes you have, the more inversions you've got.
Sure.
So when I started to learn those inversions, then my piano playing started to take off some. It was rudimentary at the time, but it was enough to really start to get me going. And I started to play piano behind the choir and that kind of thing. In the process, I learned a little bit about playing organ, only because I had to. In the church when the organist was gone, and it was the blue hair service with all the people with
blue hair service.
Yeah, what we used to call senior citizens, because they'd have their hair dyed and it would kind of turn out a bluish color.
Gotcha.
So they used to call them blue hairs. Nowadays we just call them gray hairs or bald. But when you had the gray hair service, which they wanted the organ because that's what they grew up with, I had to play the organ if the organist wasn't around. So I learned a little bit about that, but I could never really coordinate the hands with the feet very well.
And that's difficult.
Yeah. Now, while I was in school as well, because I was on track to be a music teacher, which I didn't really want to do, but there were only certain tracks that you could do. I learned all of the stringed instruments, so violin, cello, viola, bass. I didn't play bass very much. I loved cello, always loved the cello, and so I learned to play that fairly well. Learned to play flute, learned to play clarinet, a little bit of saxophone, which is akin to the clarinet. Didn't get to play any double reeds. I didn't play oboe or bassoon. But got to play many of the orchestral instruments. Stayed away from percussion because I didn't have any rhythm.
Hard to do percussion without rhythm.
Yeah. I can play guitar like, well, I used to be able to play guitar, but guitar and piano with a lot of rhythm. But you set me in front of a drum and have me play, I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah.
It's really strange.
That I feel like that's a very unique skill because I had a best friend in high school that was just super gifted at drums, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't. I feel, and I don't know why, but I cannot keep that many different things going at a
Yeah.
way that sounds anything remotely good. And like, I've tried every once in a while with like those like apps that like you can just press a button. I'm like, this should be easier, right? And I'm like, no, not at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's really a gift. It really is. I knew kids in high school that were phenomenal drummers. At least I thought they were at the time. Just, great. Just had this innate ability to just, syncopate and flip the
Yeah,
stick around and do all sorts
yeah.
of things. Yeah,
But
that's
not
really
that is
good.
not one of your
Not one of mine. Not one of
skills.
mine. Although I always wanted to play drums. I always wanted to play drums.
Hmm.
And I've had a chance every so often to kind of step in and play a little bit of a timpani role or something when I was doing orchestras, but um,
Yeah,
just never went after it.
sure.
I was too busy composing and conducting
Listen,
that
you had a lot of other things going on.
I had quite a few things going on. Yeah. And so, then from there, um, you know, I, the composing just kind of really came out of all of my work with people in the choirs and, small instrumental groups. When I was my my first time out working full time as a music minister was in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I got a chance to be the orchestra conductor for the Young Artist Symphony Orchestra, which used to come out of Diablo Valley,
Okay.
and it was a group of kids. The youngest were around 14, and the oldest could be 21. And
Okay.
these were kids that all auditioned to be in this orchestra,
Hmm.
and I came by it accidentally. I was this music minister in the church, and the lady who was the youth minister, she was also associated with the Young Artist Symphony Orchestra, YASO, we call them, YASO, and their conductor of many years dropped dead of a heart attack
Oh.
while he was on the conducting stand,
Oh.
right in front of the orchestra. He was rehearsing them, wasn't in front of other people, but it
That's
just
good.
blew the kids away. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were priming for the close of their season, and they were going on tour. So she asked me, can I know you conduct the choirs and few small orchestra things here. Could you conduct a full orchestra? And of course, by then my ego was such that I said, "Yeah, I can do that." And and I'd studied orchestra conducting in college, so and I knew enough about music by then that I was strong enough in my confidence that I could do it. And so I took over as their conductor because she really wanted somebody that she knew and she knew would have a heart for people, because a lot of these kids were really traumatized by, some of them had been with him since they were 14, and now they're approaching the
Yeah.
age when they have to leave, and they'd been with him, 5, 6, 7 years. So I took them, and we finished out the season, and we did a number of concerts around the San Francisco Bay Area. And then she says, "Okay, we need to get ready for tour." Well, when I was in college, a tour meant going to Sacramento or going to, Southern California to Anaheim and then go to Disneyland. That was a tour for the college choir. No, we were touring in Europe.
Oh,
Yeah. And so I so I got to go all expenses paid to Europe for 9 days.
oh wow.
And that was just phenomenal. Yeah, we were in Vienna for a number of days, and we went to Germany and Hungary, went to Budapest. Played. If you've ever seen pictures of Budapest, usually they show you the river, and across the river is this huge building. It used to be it where houses the um, I don't know, the administration, the government, basically.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, when we went to Hungary, the communists had just relinquished control over Hungary. So we went through the borders with guys still holding machine guns, that kind of thing. But we got into Hungary and we're in Budapest, and we got to play in the courtyard in front of this huge monolithic building. It's just one of the most gorgeous buildings I've ever seen. Yeah, it was great. We did an
That's
hour and a half concert.
incredible.
Yeah, and all the tourists and everything are stopping to listen to you. It was really fun. Really fun.
Man, that was your oops, I'm touring.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Oh, I mean, that's a really cool way to end up just touring Europe,
yeah,
literally with a group of just like,
it really
oh,
is.
like a couple states, hit a couple major, not, oh, okay, yeah, sure, let's go. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, sorry, I know that there's one other instrument that you haven't mentioned yet that I've seen you play, and it's a
Well,
very unique
you'll
one.
probably okay. It's what?
It's a very
A
unique
unique
one.
one. So
Uh-huh.
you're probably talking about either my dobro or my lap steel.
Both. Both are what
Yeah.
I'm talking about.
Well, this for those that don't know, a dobro is basically a guitar that you lay on your lap and you play it with a steel bar. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There have been a lot of people that have played similar kinds of things with the guitar held across their body like regular. And they wear a bar on their pinky usually and play like blues and that
Yeah.
kind
A
of thing.
slide guitar.
Slide guitar, exactly.
Yeah.
So a dobro is a specialized kind of slide guitar. It's got a metal top that vibrates,
Yeah, I think the
and it's
broader term is what? Resonator guitar?
a resonator guitar. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Dobro is the official name for it. It was one of the first ones that ever came out,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody calls them dobro. But it's kind of like calling every copier a Xerox,
Or
you know.
Kleenex. It's like, well,
Or
this one's a face tissue. It's like, sure.
yeah,
Anyway, hand me
that's right.
Kleenex, please.
Yeah. So anyway, I'd always wanted to play that, and the lap steel. Lap steel is kind of like a steel guitar. If you know what a steel guitar is, it lays flat on usually on a stand, and underneath there are pedals, and they make the strings twang and kind of go out of tune, so you get that kind of sound to it. But a lap steel came out of Hawaiian music,
Oh.
and Hawaiian music took the dobro idea and made it into an electric. And so a lot of Hawaiian music has this steel guitar effect to it. Well, steel guitar has since moved on from there into Appalachian music and country music as well. Anyway, I years ago when I was probably 12, 14, maybe 13, 14, I saw a guy playing a an actual steel guitar and with the pedals and everything, and I just loved that sound. It was just
Mm-hmm.
incredible sound to me, and I always wanted to play one. But again, it's one of those things. I'm recording and I'm composing and I'm conducting, and I just never take the time to learn it. Well, about 14 years ago, I had myself an accident where I lost a number of fingers on my left hand. And I found someone who made a steel for me that wraps around my thumb, and I thought, if I'm ever going to learn this instrument, now's the time to learn it. And that's literally how I learned how to play something I'd always wanted to play since I was 14. So
That's a cool way to like kind of back into, I guess I'm learning this
yeah,
now. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, and when I lost my fingers, everybody said, "Well, you're just going to turn the guitar around and play it the other way." And I said, "No, ain't ever going to be the same. Not going to be the same for me."
Interesting.
No. So I thought I'm going to go in a new direction, and so someone literally gave me a small lap steel. It's kind of a cheapie. You can buy them online now for like $60.
Sure.
But he gave me one, and that's what I learned on first, and I wound up buying my own eventually, a nicer one.
Mm. Yeah, because I will say I've seen you play it before, and it's really fun to watch like people play that instrument. Um, and I've actually mentioned on my podcast before, because I've talked with a lot of different people with musical passions before on my show, and I've talked about like learning musical instruments, and I tell people there's two primary instruments that I'm trying to learn. One I got given for my birthday, and it's a didgeridoo, which
Oh, fun.
boy howdy is that a hard instrument to learn, because one of the
Yeah.
first things you have to do is learn how to use circular breathing.
Oh, I know.
And
Yes.
it's not like this little simple thing of just like you just need to have a little bit of air going. No, you have to fill a giant tube with air constantly, otherwise you go
Constantly.
it's like, oh cool. And I
Yeah.
found out the hard way that the dobro is the only instrument that I've found that is labeled as a breath instrument versus wind. And that's
Yeah.
because it takes all of your breath out of you to get the sound out.
Yeah.
That's the first one, and the other one is the dobro, and
Yeah.
that was actually gifted to me by you. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I unfortunately was not able to bring that in our tiny Prius across the country, but it's something that as soon as I have the opportunity, I want to be able to pick that up. The difficult thing, and I was thinking about this when we were talking about how you can learn just about anything online. The difficult thing with the dobro is that almost every single tutorial that I look at either starts with your vast knowledge of playing a guitar, which I don't know
Yeah.
how to play.
Yeah.
It's like, here's how you go, and here's what you
Yeah.
do. The other side, because of its similarities with the finger picks to banjos, is, well, since you've mastered the banjo and moving on to the dobro, I'm like,
Oh, that.
also I haven't done that either. So
Yeah. No,
without
that.
guitar and without banjo, where do I start? It's like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
So
That's a crazy way to go.
yeah,
It's helpful. It's helpful that I had all of that guitar
sure.
experience because I was able to translate it fairly easily. But the dobro can be picked up as its own instrument really
Yeah.
quickly.
Well, it's fun because like I can pluck at that, and kind of like with that slide and those finger picks, I can kind of make some sounds
Yeah.
that I like, some background music. And then like there's a few like tutorials that just start with just like some simple things to start with the dobro, and like there's like a 3-pick thing that you go up the scale and down
Yeah.
the scale and just slide it back
Yep.
and forth, and it's just this really like and it's like
Yeah.
cool. And like
Yeah.
once I started learning that, I started noticing like bluesgrass uses a lot of dobros or resonator guitars.
Absolutely.
There's a few different cartoons, oddly enough, that use
Yeah.
dobros because that like that
Yeah.
wow 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 is a really easy and iconic sound to
Yeah.
make, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a more widely used instrument than I was expecting it to be. And like it's a really fun thing to just like almost meditative to just like pluck on it and just like kind of zone out a little bit. And I'm like, if this is all I do with this instrument, I'm happy with it. I'd like to learn more, don't get me wrong, but like just to like play on it, just play around on it's really satisfying.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, but the dobro and the lap steel are the ones that I was like, I know you know those, because those are the ones I've seen, and the other one I know you gave to me. So I was like, I know they're in there somewhere. But yeah. Uh, I'm sorry. I had to get those out because I was like, they're there,
Hey,
they're there. um, all right. So we talked about how you got into conducting, how you got from conducting to composing. Um, what other things have you done with these skills? Because you've talked about you briefly talked about that you were learning to become a teacher. That's why you learned a few of these other instruments. Did you ever do anything with that teaching?
you know, well, I did teach, and I taught immediately after I got my master's degree.
Okay,
Taught for several years in an all-girls school, which which I very honestly, let me take a quick step back. When I was
sure.
in school, everybody would, you're starting to come up to graduation. Everybody's going, so what are you going to do with your music degree? And I said, well, I'm really interested in being in church music. Well, you're never going to make any money that way. No, churches don't pay. So, and I said, well, what do you expect me to do? And you're going to teach. Everybody teaches if you get a music degree. I didn't want to teach. I did not want to teach. Um, but um, my mentor at the time says, well, I just got a notice that this girls' school, which was not too far away, it was in Concord, um, in Northern California. Um, they're looking for a music teacher. And I thought to myself, girls' school, huh? I could handle girls. I could handle it. I'd be all right. It was the guys, and their attitudes and I'm trying to learn how to be independent and macho. I didn't want to. Well, let me tell you, I would have taken a guy's school any day after I served several years with the girls. It was a great opportunity. But what was interesting, it was the only thing that I really got to do musically was lead a choir. Um, they wanted to put together a choir, and so I started out literally with three voices.
Oh wow.
That Yeah, that's all that wanted to sign up to be in the choir. And so I took those three voices, and I was writing stuff for three voices for their particular voice ranges. And by the second half of the year, I wound up with 12 people. And so I
Oh,
actually had a choir. The next year I had 47. So it just
did
blossomed.
something right.
Yeah, I did something right with it. And all the rest of the time I did teach a little bit of guitar, um, to real rank beginners. People are, hey, I got this thing, it looks like a guitar, but I've never played it, that kind of thing.
What is
Um,
it? What are the frets for?
yeah, yeah. One of I took all the metal things, metal bars off of the neck. Is that okay?
They felt
Sure.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, it felt uncomfortable. And then and I taught music history.
Okay,
This is what I did while I was there.
gotcha.
Um, so that, and then like I said, I got into full-time music ministry for a number of years.
Hmm.
Wound up back in California after a couple of decades, and um, while I was there, we moved because my folks' parents were not well, and so we moved to Idlewild, and that's where I met you eventually. But while I'm in Idlewild, I thought, well, what am I going to do with myself? And I felt like I was too old to try to get back into the church music again. So I looked around and I took a job interpreting for a deaf girl. That's another skill that I picked up along the way. I signed fluently, and so I picked up a job interpreting for this deaf girl in a high school,
Hmm.
and I'm watching these teachers teach, and this was at a time when the curriculum was just literally laid out for you. It was like open to Friday. This is what we have to do,
Right.
and you give them the assignment and you sit at your desk and wait for them to finish the assignment. And I thought, I can do better than this. So I started to look around for a private school because I did not have my teaching credential. I didn't want to get a teaching credential because I didn't want to teach, remember? So so I didn't get it. And then so I looked for private schools and I wound up teaching in a private school down in Palm Springs, and I was there for 10 years. And ironically, the only thing I did musically was oversee the kids who would be leading the chapel once a week. They would be doing the music, and I would kind of, you know, more or less be a mentor and a consultant for them. You know, why don't you try this chord, or maybe change the key a little bit because it's a little too high. That's about
Gotcha.
all I did musically.
Huh.
Yep.
I do have a question for you, and I meant to
Yeah.
ask this when you first mentioned this. So you were very vocal about like you did not want to teach.
Yeah.
What was that like? What was that barrier that made you not want to teach so like fervently?
Well, it really stemmed from the fact that um, honestly, I got bullied a lot when I was in school,
Okay,
and I don't like bullying attitudes, and I
sure.
saw a lot of that uh, when I was doing my student teaching. Saw a
Mm,
lot of the boys were, you know, thinking that they were all that, and
right.
they knew more than the teacher could possibly know, and they were making the room chaotic. And I thought, this is just not me. I'm not going to do this. I don't want to do this.
So kind of the culture that you had seen kind of was what heavily dissuaded you
Yeah,
from wanting to teach.
absolutely,
Gotcha.
absolutely.
But you ended up doing it quite a bit actually.
Yeah, after that, when once I matured and I got to a point where I thought, I can handle kids.
Yeah.
And I got an opportunity to actually see it firsthand when I was doing all the church music. I did a lot of music with kids and all different
Mm-hmm.
ages and different you know lots of different
Okay.
opportunities. So
Yeah, because I know firsthand that you're a good teacher. As
yeah,
you were the
thank you.
one to teach me hosting at the camp we worked at, and so like I got to see firsthand your ability to teach, which usually translates to like being able to teach most things that you know, because I feel like the understanding of how to teach people something, it doesn't limit itself to I know how to teach this one subject, but I can't teach you anything else
Right,
that I know.
right,
There are
right.
some people that have that such a narrow focus of like I can teach explicitly this and nothing else. But
Yeah,
most people, I feel like if you know the ideology behind how to help someone learn something, if you know the subject enough, you should be able to do that as well.
yeah,
So like being someone that did learn from you, I'm like he's got to be a good teacher. So when you said that you're like I was opposed to teach, I was like, huh.
yeah,
It struck me as odd as being on the receiving end of teaching that you did. I'm like, but you're really good at
yeah. Well, thank
it.
you, thank
Yeah,
you. Yeah, it took
absolutely.
me it took me a while to get to that.
Okay. So I got a couple more questions that I want to
Yeah,
make sure I get on. Because as much as I love just wandering around and going through the story, which it does cover a lot of it, there's a few things
sure. Let's
that I
let's
want to get
do.
to. So like first off, where are you currently at? Like what is your life currently look like as far as music goes? Like what are you doing?
At this point in time, I am only writing music. I'm only
Okay,
composing, and it's all
gotcha.
digital. It's all digital, which
And
was a
is it
new. It was a when I got into this, which I actually started to play with when I was in Idlewild. So that was back in the early 2000s.
mm-hmm.
Um, so while I was there, at 2007, I think I started in Idlewild, and a couple of years later, I really started to get back into the digital composing. I was still
Yeah.
working. working in church music at the time. And so that was occupying a lot of my time. But then I got into the digital composing.
Hmm.
Since in 2020, when COVID hit, my wife and I were on the road. And so the music that I played was all dobro and lap steel. And I play for, we'd wind up in camps and, they'd have what they call a jam, you know, nothing like a music jam that you have usually, but it's
Right.
anyway. It was just a bunch of people getting together and playing with one another, and
Hmm.
uh, and so got a lot of music done that way. Then when we settled here, um, I officially retired finally. Uh, on and off, working for a number of years. Then I
Yeah.
officially retired and took up actually digitally composing on the computer.
Gotcha.
The only real instrument I have is a keyboard. I still play
Mm,
with the lap steel and still keep up with my dobro, but I don't get to play those at all with
gotcha.
any groups. There is
Gotcha.
there is a group that meets here that plays, I think country music, but they meet like once a month, and it's always on a day that I can't meet with them. So
Oh,
I've,
gotcha.
I've never I've never had the opportunity to play the dobro since being on the road. But I do a lot of recording, digital recording.
Gotcha. And is this like self-published like albums or like what is the music for?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. It's a good question. Um, you know, one of the things that happens when you retire is you decide, am I going to do this because I like doing it, or am I going to do it because I think I can make some money at it? You know,
Sure.
and a lot of people go that route. That has never struck me as something that was real important. What's
Sure.
important for me is that maybe people get to hear my music.
Sure.
Um, and so I'm writing primarily for people just to listen to my music.
Gotcha.
Um, I do have, I have a couple of things that are out there and available for people to listen to. But a lot of the stuff I've been writing in the last year, probably 30 pieces or more, pretty substantial kinds of pieces I've yet to even put out there because
Gotcha.
I spend most of my time just in the studio, just, writing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Um, okay. We'll have to plug some of that stuff a little bit later so people can get
Yeah.
a get an idea of what that is. So in when you were like in the middle of teaching and doing composing, like what did a normal day look like for you? Like how much was prepping for school? How much was like just sitting like staring at a screen going or at a notebook going C, maybe a C here. like what did that look like on an average day of teaching and composing?
Well, teaching and composing, I really wasn't doing any composing when I was teaching,
Gotcha. Okay.
except when I first started, right after getting my master's. But then,
Okay.
like after I taught for 3 years in the girls' school, and then I got this position as a full time music minister. So that's where all my composing went, was to that.
Okay,
So it
well
wasn't
then
really
let's
teaching.
take a little sample of each of teaching and then what little day in life would like composing look like.
Okay. So for teaching, one of the things I learned early on was that not only was it relatively easy to keep control of a classroom, but I knew more than they did. Having had as much schooling and as much experience as I had, plus I have multiple interests, and which have always gotten in my way, by the way. Um, but because of that, um, I found that I could absorb information about a particular topic pretty easily. So I would spend maybe maybe 3, 4 hours on the weekend prepping for the next week, and that would take me through the next week with all of the information that I needed to disseminate. I was teaching. I was teaching a number of things. First of all, I taught 2 science classes. This was
Okay.
when I was in Palm Springs for 10 years. So I taught two
Gotcha.
science classes. One was Earth science, which came
Hmm.
relatively easy to me because my brother's a geologist, and
Oh,
he just he just kind of pounded that stuff in. He's older than I am, and just pounded it into my head. The second one was physics for eighth
okay.
graders, and I love physics. I just absolutely love physics and just the way things work. And
Yeah.
how does this happen? How can it be sunny out yet it's crisp, and the air is cold, and those kinds of things? What makes that happen? And so
Mhm.
I just absorbed that stuff like crazy. What's the
Yeah.
difference between speed and velocity and things like that? Just fascinated me. I just loved learning that stuff, and so it became really easy for me to absorb that. Besides that, then I taught Bible, which by then I knew quite a bit about, and so that did not take a great deal of prep time for me.
Yeah.
Personal study time, yes, but not prep time. And then I taught drama. And the thing about drama was I studied drama when I was in high school and a little bit when I first got into college. And so I knew how to handle um, a classroom for drama,
Sure.
and just kind of coming up with ideas was relatively easy because there were quite a few things on the internet by then. But I also found another love of mine, that was writing. And so I would write all of the plays that my kids would do. And
Okay.
and so I have about 20 plays under my belt from the 10 years that I was there. I'd write
Mhm.
two a year. And
Wow.
yeah, and it was just fun as all get out. And I particularly loved, I did work with middle schoolers as well as high schoolers, and I loved working with the high school drama because they just love um, doing ad libs and
Yeah,
improvisation.
they're getting into the I
Oh,
have my own
absolutely.
creativity and I can take this
Yeah.
I can follow where you're going and I can add my own spin to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of that and really enjoyed it. So that was my schooling. It was, a couple of hours on the weekend just in prep. Every night I'd probably correct some papers and that kind of thing. But,
Hmm.
that was my regular day for
Okay.
teaching. Uh, for composing nowadays,
Hmm.
composing is uh, my wife is working. She decided
Hmm.
that she wanted to go back to work, so she works for Lowe's, and so she works from the afternoon on, and I just spend the mornings with her, and we'll talk. We'll do some things around the house, and then as soon as she leaves for work, which is around 1 o'clock, I'm in the studio the entire time until she gets home.
Gotcha.
So I'm there for about 8 hours, 9 hours.
And what what part of that is how condensed is the actual I'm doing stuff because I've heard from writers and both literary and musical writers that they sit there and they're like, well, there's a computer.
Yeah,
um
yeah, the blank screen,
the
blank screen.
ooh, I got my start of the book. Okay. Okay, I got
Yeah,
the.
yeah,
Actually, I don't like the. Okay, you know what? Actually, in. No, no, not in.
yeah.
You know what? Actually,
I,
let's start over. It's like you didn't do anything. And it's like
yeah,
4 hours of that, and then it's like 2 hours of I just wrote 2 chapters. Okay, all right, cool. Anyway, all
yeah.
right. Well, that's it for
No,
today.
I have been there. I have been there. Um, Usually with the music because it's
Hmm.
it's so ingrained in me
Hmm.
that when I sit down and I start with something, and most composers will tell you, I always start with melody, or
Mhm.
I always start with words, or I always start with the chords, or I always start with the drum sound, or
Sure.
rhythm, or I can hear strings in the background just kind of going ooh. So I'm going to start with that and see where it develops. Um, and I have my own process. I have a couple of different ways in which I approach it. I'm not rigid about it. And so I write a lot of very different kinds of music. Whereas, some people, they'll just write one particular kind of
They
music
they
over and over and
have
over.
their you can taste their flavor in the music kind of,
Exactly.
where it's like,
Exactly.
all right, this I know,
Yeah.
okay, all right, I know who wrote
Yeah.
this song. It's like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, well, because they always start with the same, like, little ditty at the beginning. They have like a riff that they really lean on, you know.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
you kind of free your process kind of frees you from that like, this is my kind of music.
Yeah, it really does. Really does.
Okay.
Now, I love chords a lot, and I've been playing probably for the last 5, 6 years with, you know, chords that are kind of out of the ordinary. Um, you listen to something like Louie Louie, 3 chords, dun 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 dun,
Yeah.
and you know, 97% of the pop songs out there are those 3 chords,
Yeah, there's a
or
band
maybe
actually.
4 chords.
Yeah, there's a band that did the four chords of
Oh,
awesome.
I
That's
love
like, and
those
it's
guys.
and it's just like, okay, what
Yeah,
song is this? Well, that's and it's like, oh, but wait, let
but
me
yeah,
sing slightly different
yeah,
lyrics. It's
that's
like,
right.
oh, and then it just
Whoa,
keeps going.
yeah,
Yeah, and just keeps changing. He's like, oh my
it
gosh, how
keeps
many
changing.
songs is this? And
Yeah,
it's one of the
that's
reasons why people play guitars, because you can learn those four chords. Like, I know like 15,000 songs. It's like, do you
yeah.
really? It's like, yeah, because they all use the same four chords.
They
Like,
all use the
all
same
right.
chord. They all so so anyway. I in college, they teach you all of the chords, and then they teach you, modifications of chords and substitutions
Hmm.
of chords and those kinds of things. So I learned how to substitute chords in every so often, like C major. You can get by with an E minor when there's supposed to be a C major, or an A minor when there's supposed to be a C major. It depends on
Okay.
which way you're moving. And so you learn how to adapt and move those around. Well, since then I've gotten into jazz chords, so I'm learning how to utilize some of those as well.
Okay.
But anyway, so I will go into the studio and I usually have an idea of what I need to do. Uh, it usually starts with, dang, one of these times I've really got to organize all of this music that I've been writing. And that is the number one craw in every musician that does digital music, is keeping the stuff organized somehow. It is
Sure.
just, oh, it's a tremendous job.
Yeah.
So I may do that for a little while and go, okay, I'm done with that. I was thinking about this chord progression. I'm going to start, and so I have an actual piano. And so I'll sit there and I'll play through this chord progression. Oh, I like that. I like that. I'm going to get that down. So I'll pull down my DAW, which is my digital audio workstation, and that allows me to just go ahead and record in the chords I was just playing. And I
Yeah.
may listen to it a couple of times and go, oh, I got a feel for where this might go, and then I'll take it from there. I like to let the music actually develop on its own.
Sure.
Some musicians will say, that doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Yeah, it does. It really does. If you
See,
give yourself over to the music and let it just
right.
kind of develop, it can go some really remarkable places. Now, one thing it doesn't do, though, it
Mhm.
doesn't make me a Hans Zimmer, because
Sure.
Hans Zimmer, you can hand him a 2-second clip of a movie and he'll give you an entire score.
Sure. Yeah.
Me,
Yeah.
me, I have not yet learned how to take something and say, okay, I'm going to write a piece about snow falling, on a dead deer or something,
Sure.
some obscure thing. I can't do it. I just can't do it.
Well,
I'll
so
start out like
mhm,
that, but it'll kind of morph into something, and
right.
it'll become
Well, so I have a different perspective on that because I'm a podcaster. There's
yeah,
a million radio and podcasts, like interviewers, that they have this like structure. They have these like four key questions that they're going to ask this person. They've written the entire like these four questions, very intricate questions, very targeted questions for this interview. And or they have a script and they send the questions out to the people that they're interviewing, and so that they can prepare the response and stuff like that. And like they have this very like streamlined thing that they do. And like I thought I had to do that when I first started doing this, because I'm like, I know that I'm good at asking questions, but I know that people have to have these like very specific questions. Like they have these questions that they've crafted for these people, and I'm like, I'm not a writer. I don't write questions. Like I have slowly developed like a few core questions that I try and make sure that I'm getting answers for. But if you listen to my intro, it's about
yeah,
curiosity. Like my curiosity can take me through a 4 hour conversation, which it has in the past. I'm
yeah,
like, I wrote down like four questions, and I'm like, I might not get to these questions specifically, but I think these would be good questions asked. But like, I've realized that getting away from those core questions has actually helped me to give my own flavor to the podcast, where I'm like, hey, I've gone through this whole thing, and if I showed you my notes, I have literally five things written down for this interview, because I'm like, I know my structure of like where I want to go. I know the story I want
yeah.
to kind of follow, and I
I
know a
believe
few
it.
key points of like your story that I can kind of go into, and the rest of it is going to be, well, what's the next natural question that I should be asking after this? Like he just explained this. What's the next question? Like I don't have to like, what's a good question? Let me write that down really quick. It's just well, obviously I'm going to ask this question next. Like, how do you
Sure.
know that? And like, but there's other people that can't do that. But
Yeah,
also, I can't sit there and go like, okay, I'm gonna have Allan Dutch on, so here's every single question that I need to ask him, and that's gonna be it. I don't have any questions that are gonna like, I can't do that. And so like, there's differences in interviews and how people
yeah,
interview, and similar we
absolutely.
talked about like Charlie Puth, like how he just kind of like, and there's a song.
Yeah,
And but other people have this like rigid thing that you talked about, like they have a pillar that they build the rest of the song around, whether it's the drums or the bass line or this melody that they have. And
yeah,
you have this kind of more free form, like this is yeah, you have this ephemeral idea of this song that you kind of let it grow how it decides to.
yeah,
And I can personally appreciate that a lot, because that's similar to how I interview. Is I have an idea of what I'm going to be interviewing this person about, and that's really all you are given as the interviewee. Is we're talking
yeah,
about my music and teaching and playing and stuff like that, and I don't give you prep questions. I
yeah. Really.
and I'm like,
Yeah,
I have a fallback of questions that I can ask in case the person I'm interviewing is not giving me much to work with. But most of the time, it's just, hey, what's the next thing that curiosity would ask, and I go with it.
yeah,
And so I can very
yeah,
much appreciate that style of creativity.
yeah. There are uh, there are a number of things that podcasts and such that I subscribe to that are from musicians, who are
Mm-hmm.
out there trying to make some sense of a living off of being a
Mm-hmm.
musician. They're writing, they're composers in their own right. They may write for TV or video
Mm-hmm.
games, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
um, and every so often there's one guy who periodically will drop in a challenge, and he says, okay, so your challenge this week is to write 2.5 minutes of composition for this, and he'll show you a picture, and so you get this
Okay.
picture of kind of a blur of a kid running past a forest. Write 2.5 minutes for that. Well,
Interesting.
I've tried it once or twice and failed miserably at trying to come up with something. But almost invariably, because I've written so much in the past, I think, oh, I wrote something like that about 4 years ago. But to just pull it out of the hat right then and there, I can't do it.
Yeah.
It's a very fluid thing for me.
Yeah. No, I like I said, I do very much appreciate that of like and it's dynamic, which is
Yeah,
I like it's very
it
dynamic
is.
because like I can't like for some people I can write out a series of questions that are like these are things I do want to know about this person, but if you said hey write some questions for somebody that's into music I'd be like I don't know what genre do you
Yeah,
like? Like
yeah,
it's specifically dynamic to the person that I'm interviewing, not the subject that I'm
sure it is.
interviewing. And like,
Yeah,
yeah, I could read some of those questions I found are really reliable, like vehicles for other people, but like I didn't
yeah,
like writing it for the genre is just not doesn't work. Like I can't just write a question that's like,
exactly,
well, you know, and it's like there's other people that
exactly.
can. There's other people like, oh
I
yeah, no. Every time I have an artist on, I ask this question. It's like, cool.
Yeah, I used to work for the county a long time ago, and I was on a committee that was
Mm-hmm.
interviewing potential candidates for a position, and we all had the same questions to ask. So every single person that came in, because you know, they, there's a lot of scrutiny over government agencies when they hire, so you can't ask people different questions, right? You have to
Right.
ask them the exact same question in the exact same way every time. So
Mm-hmm.
you get like 10 candidates come in that day, and every one of them you say, so where do you expect to be 5 years from now?
Right.
It, just crazy. I mean, you don't really get a sense of who the person is by doing
No,
that. So,
no,
yeah, you
and
got to be fluid.
it's not catering to them at all. It's not catering to like
Right.
what you like. There's certain people that like I skip questions because I'm like this doesn't apply to them. Like if I did that and I tried to make like my skeleton of questions that I have like if I tried to use that on every single person, we'd end up some very interesting like what do you, I'm not a professional though. It's like but like okay, but the thing is my question asked when did this become a like profession for you? It's like well it didn't. I'm a hobbyist. Okay, but you do have to answer the question. Like it's like
Yeah,
not everyone's taking it professional, but for
that's
those
right.
that did
Right.
take it professional, I want to know like what changed that because I know some people do things as hobbies their whole life. Some
Yeah,
people try to do it as a actual like job, and then it was like maybe not, you know.
maybe not.
But yeah,
Exactly.
but that
Exactly.
dynamic aspect is important, and I very much can appreciate a creativity that stems from that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Um, so I really think there's only like two more things that I want to kind of talk about, and that's
Okay.
as a composer, you know, you probably get questions about like composition all the time. What's like one question that you wish more people asked about composition?
One of the questions that I really like somebody to ask me is, where does it come from? Because
Okay.
there's there's really only three answers to that I can think of. One is that I just kind of threw it together because I know that I can get a hold of loops and samples and all that kind of stuff, and I know how to work the computer, so I just kind of threw all of this stuff together and came up with this 3 minute mishmash. Okay, that's
Yeah.
one. The second one is that technically I knew what I had to do and I put this piece together and I wrote this piece,
Sure.
and it feels a lot like Beethoven, I know, but it's from me. And the third
Sure.
one is that it comes from within me.
Okay.
It comes within the heart of me that loves music. And I think for some of the real greats, You know,
Hmm.
we've talked several times about Zimmer. We talked
Hmm.
about, John Williams. Um,
Hmm.
Bruce Broughton is another really incredible composer nowadays. All of these film score composers, but at the heart of it is genuinely a heart for music and
Right.
what it means to them. I could not be doing this if it was nothing more than, hey, I'm going to see what kind of sounds I can make today.
Yeah.
Now there is a side of music development that is like that. There are a lot of people that are designing sounds,
Sure.
which kind of sounds cool to me, and it kind of is a little intriguing, but it's not enough to move me in that direction.
Sure.
And it's certainly a legitimate part of the industry, but they're
Yeah.
not probably the kind of people that want to sit down and do what I do, and
Sure.
actually put that stuff together into something
Yeah.
that's cohesive. And that's
Yeah.
okay. that's
Yeah.
that's them.
Absolutely.
And somebody's
Yep.
got to be the engineer.
Right.
you know
No, and like I said, that's why I every interviewer has their own spot. And like I'm not saying that
yeah,
like people that write questions are wrong, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly,
It's
exactly.
everyone's doing their own thing here, and
Yeah,
that's okay. That's good, in fact.
yeah,
We need that
yeah.
variety.
you know
Um
the the other question I'd like to hear,
mhm,
and I didn't hear it enough when I was teaching, which was kind of sad, but is, what would I need to do to be able to do that? Because
mm,
I like the idea of being able to take somebody that has a curiosity for it, and I can maybe
mhm.
see that there's a heart for doing this kind of thing, and just don't know where to go with it.
Gotcha.
There's just not enough people actually celebrating the idea that I've got information that I can give to somebody. Everybody wants to make some money off of it. And,
Mhm.
you know, earning a living is one thing, but there comes a time when you're confronted by people who are just going, you know, I've been doing this all my life, but I don't know how to break into this kind of a business, or
Right.
how do I contact somebody? How do I find an agent for my writing or something?
Yeah.
And,
So
I would love for somebody to just ask me that question,
yeah, the kind of
because I'd give
what
them
would fill the gaps? What's the next
exactly,
step type thing? Okay.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
I like
Yeah,
that. Um, yeah. I do want to interject one more just because I feel like you kind of answered it a little bit, but I want to kind of get a full fleshed out answer. One of my
sure.
favorite questions is like if you had a magic snap, you could just snap your fingers and just have everything exactly how you wanted it for music. What would that look like for you? Would that look like having like a whole studio? Would that look like having just like what does that look like for you?
I'm really satisfied with what I've got at this point, which is nothing more than a couple of keyboards and a computer with a great many um, wonderful sounds nowadays are available to you. I mean, I have literally orchestral sounds available to me. So I can write something that could probably be used in a movie.
Mhm.
I have written things that approach that, certainly.
Right.
Uh, so I'm very satisfied with that. I would love nothing more than to actually have a studio where people could come in and record.
Okay.
I've always been really admiring of live studio recording.
Hmm.
And I even tried to take a course on it once, and it was just too far away. It was an hour and a half every time I went
Oh
to
wow.
to
Yeah.
drive to this thing. So I never followed through on it. I lasted probably about 6 weeks, and I just couldn't continue. It was a
Yeah.
2-year course. Um, but I would love to have a actual studio, with
Yeah.
muted walls and good microphones, and
Hmm.
people come in and want to record a song. Or,
Yeah.
hey, we got this little band. We'd really like to record it and make it sound as good as we
Yeah.
could,
I
you know.
like that.
Yeah.
That's a really fun like thing to like imagine, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I feel like there's a small part in a lot of people that have that, like, just having a studio sounds cool.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you actually know how to use it, it's even cooler.
Right. And
Yeah.
knowing how to use it, that's the big
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot
Um,
goes into it.
yeah. Last question for you. Um, this is a broad thing, as this is Curious Joel. What's something that currently has your curiosity?
Currently has my curiosity.
Yeah.
Gee whiz, that is a good question.
Thank you.
Golly, what's next?
Okay.
That has my curiosity. You know, being retired, and being in a situation like I'm in, where I don't have to necessarily work, and my wife is very satisfied doing her job in Lowe's,
Mhm.
and we've got a nice little apartment that we live in, but we're thinking of spending the winter in Florida and wondering if it's time for us to get back on the road again. So that really has my curiosity up. Um, just wondering what's next. You
Yeah.
know, when you get to my age, which is quite gray haired, and in fact, much of it's gone now. Um, there comes a point in time when you kind of get introspective and you go, okay, I did the teaching, I've done music, I've done art, I've done some writing, I did some really wonderful things with people. I got to, interact with many, many different types of people. I mean, that's been tremendously satisfying to me. And the real question is, what does God have for me next? I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah. I like that. Um, so anything that I forgot, any questions that I didn't ask that you would like to answer?
My
Um,
goodness. No, offhand, I can't think of any. I think
okay.
we've been around the mulberry bush a
I,
lot
I,
with
tr-
this thing.
I try and be thorough.
Yeah. What
Okay.
instruments have I never played that I would love to?
Ooh.
Didgeridoo. I I saw a guy when I was in Austria
Hmm.
at out in the plaza,
Hmm.
the St. Stephen's Plaza. Beautiful plaza. Oh my gosh, gorgeous plaza. And he had a didgeridoo, and this thing was 9 feet long,
Oh
something
wow.
like that. It was huge. It was huge, and he was just just sitting there playing this thing, and he would show people how he does it. How he does. And I always thought I would just love to be able to play something like that, but I'm afraid it's going to sound like you told me it sounded when you first blew into yours. It sounds like
See,
an elephant, and that's it. That's all you get out of it.
I'd love to get to an elephant, like you can get like with a full lungs, you have this like short warble, and then it just dies because you don't have
It
anything
just dies.
to compress. It's like bagpipes when you're at the very end of the bag and you just
Yeah.
forgot. It's like it's like, okay,
Yeah.
that, I mean, yes, that was bagpipes. Not how they're
Yeah.
supposed to sound. But like if you can learn to do that circular breathing and like hold enough air in your mouth while you're breathing in to actually continue pushing out, it's one of the coolest instruments in my opinion, of like the sound it
Yeah.
produces, very unique. So yeah, I like that. Um,
Yeah.
so anything that you'd like to plug? Any like
You know,
you
I I
music
have
a
a
little bit.
website. I
Hmm.
have music that is on SoundCloud,
Okay.
but I can never remember my address. So the easiest thing is I also have all of that music on my website. So my
Okay.
website is the thekingsartisan.com.
Okay.
All one
All right.
word. The
Yeah, and
King's Artisan.
I'll link that in the description of the episode. So yeah,
Yeah.
people listening
Dot
can go
com.
check that out. Perfect.
Yeah, it's got my writings there. Uh,
Okay.
I've got a couple of books that I've written. I got some of my plays on there. It
Okay.
has some of my artwork, and it has all of my music, or a lot of
Nice.
my music. A lot of my
So, but
music.
all pretty centralized.
Yeah, it really
Gotcha.
is.
All right.
Yeah,
So go.
I was trying to do one of each a while back, and that I could
It's a
just never
lot.
make it fly. And I said,
Yeah,
why don't I just all in one place, just
there you
pool
go.
them together? It's a
Nice and
creative
simple.
website. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, so go check out if you want to hear some of his works and read some of his stuff. Go check out his website. Like I said, link down below. Um, Allan, thank you so much for coming on my show. I really appreciate
Well,
it.
well, thank you for having me, Joel. This was a blast. I
I'm
I
glad
had
you
a
enjoyed
great
it.
time. Had a
Yeah,
great time.
awesome.
It was good to
Uh,
see you too.
you too. So, for everyone listening, I have a Patreon. I'm trying to make this kind of a full time thing, or at least get as far away from having just a full time job. This would be. I'd love to be able to do this full time, book people, get them on, but that requires money, unfortunately. So go to patreon.com/ Curious Joel. $5 a month. You support me. You get to hear the icebreakers that happened before most episodes. There's a few that happened afterwards. But I also have some unique episodes that I just record just for Patreon. I have Joel Rants, which is me putting my young son to sleep while I go off on a topic that is particularly irked me that day. Uh, I have Car Talk, which is me and people in a car talking about a topic for a short time, not enough for an entire episode, not interesting enough for a full episode, but just kind of talking about a particular topic. And a few other odds and ends here and there. Sorry for the sudden interruption, but the audio after here got a little choppy, so I wanted to make sure you guys got a clean, crisp ending for the episode. So the other thing you can do with Patreon is listen to episodes before they're posted to everything else. Like this episode is posted already on Patreon. And the other thing is sometimes they have less editing. So the episode on Patreon actually doesn't have this fixed audio at the end because I wanted you to hear what the actual recording was. But yeah, you can. That's one of the best ways to support me is through the Patreon. The other way you can do it is by listening to episodes and sharing episodes with other people. I have ads that run before and after the episodes, and so when you share the episode or listen to an episode, I am making a little bit of money every time someone listens to those ads. As always, you can find me on Instagram at CuriousJoelCast, on Twitter at Joel Circo, and email me at curiousjoelcast@gmail.com. One more thing that you can also do with Patreon, sorry, just remembered this, is I will be asking for votes sometimes on who should be on my show next, asking for input on the questions that should be asked, stuff like that. So go over to Patreon, you support me, support my channel, and actually have some insider stuff on what's going to happen next. With that, as always, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay curious, y'all.